All right, let's go ahead and get started. As I said, thank you everyone for joining us for the Near Southeast Area Plan virtual community workshop for the draft plan. My name is Scott Robinson with Denver Community Planning and Development. Start with a few administrative things here. We do have a Spanish interpreter. So if you would like the Spanish interpretation, use the interpretation button down at the bottom of your screens. I will turn that on in just a second. If I could ask Lucia, our interpreter, to say a few words in Spanish about how to access that.
Hola, soy Lucía, soy una intérprete y estoy disponible para traducir todo en español para quien la va a necesitar.
Great, thank you. So I will start this and then if you need it, go to the bottom and select Spanish. If you want the English, go to the interpretation button and select English at the bottom so you can stay on the English channel. All right. And then we're going to start with a presentation here, and then we'll go to a Q&A session at the second half of the meeting. But if you have questions that come up during the presentation, feel free to use the Q&A function to enter your questions, and we'll keep track of those and we can answer them in the latter part of the meeting. Or if you're having any technical difficulties or any issues like that, put those in the Q&A as well. We're monitoring those and we should be able to help you out. With that, we can move in and like to welcome Councilman Paul Cashman to say a few words here at the beginning of the meeting.
Thank you very much, Scott, and welcome to everybody. Thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight to give your feedback on the draft recommendations of the Near Southeast Area Planning Initiative for the neighborhoods of Washington, Virginia Vale, Indian Creek, Virginia Village, Goldsmith, and University Hills North. It's a critical planning effort that'll guide development in these neighborhoods for the next couple of decades. We'll look at things like quality of life with so many great businesses in our community. Are there particular types of businesses that are missing and that we want to attract? Would it be nice to have a concert venue or live theater or educational opportunities? The plan looks at mobility. How do we move people throughout this part of the city more efficiently and more safely? How do we amend our roadways, our intersections? What type of transit do we need to add, and where might that best serve us? And then as far as housing, as more and more people move into Denver, where in the near southeast neighborhoods can we accommodate them best? What type of housing should we add, if any? Where should it go, and how do we keep it affordable? You'll hear about the possibility of adding duplex development in parts of our area. And again, would that be most appropriate, and what guardrails do we have to put on that to keep the affordability that people are used to in large portions of near southeast Denver? So with that, I'll just again offer my welcome and thanks for taking the time, and thanks to Scott and the city staff for the hard work they've been doing in putting this together, along with the Near Southeast Plan Steering Committee. So I hope you all have a good evening, and look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Thank you, Councilman. That was a great overview of the issues in the area and what the plan's trying to address. I notice we also have Councilwoman Kendra Black here, and I know staff members from Councilwoman Amanda Sawyer's office as well. So those are the three council districts that cover portions of Near Southeast. So we're happy we have folks from all of those offices here. As I mentioned, we'll start with a presentation tonight. I'll go over what the Near Southeast Area Plan is, what we've done so far and what's coming up next, and then go over a little bit of what is actually in the plan, what the content is, what the recommendations are. And then, as I said, we'll open it up for questions and comments at the end. So if you think of a question as we're going through this, go ahead and put that into the question box or the Q&A in Zoom. As I said, we're monitoring those. We'll keep those queued up for questions at the end. Before we get into the presentation, though, wanted to ask a few questions about your participation in this process. So let me launch this poll here, and this should come up in your Zoom screen, so you can just answer these quick questions for us. I went backwards on the presentation. So first, we'd like to know how you heard about this meeting. Was it one of our emails? Are you on our mailing list? Did you hear about it through your council office? Did you get a mailer? Did you hear about it from your neighborhood organization? Did your RNO inform you about it? Did you see one of the signs out and about? Did you see it on Facebook or Nextdoor or Twitter? Did you hear about it from one of your friends or neighbors, or was there some other way that you found out about this meeting? Then we'd like to know, do we have new folks joining us tonight, folks that have been participating all along? So if you could tell us about how many of these events you've been to in the past, whether that's virtual meetings like this, in-person workshops, office hours, you saw us at South by Southeast, or you saw us at the library or National Night Out or something like that. If you've interacted with us in one of these meetings before, let us know that. And then have you had a chance to take a look at the plan yet? Have you read through it all? Have you not looked at it at all yet? Have you gone through part of it, but you're not done with it yet? Or if you don't even know what the plan is, that's fine. If that's the case, you're in the right place. By the end of this meeting, you should know exactly what the Near Southeast Area Plan is. So thanks for attending. Give that just another minute here for folks to finish up the poll. Well, while we're waiting, to spot a question here in the Q&A, someone asking about where this will be available for viewing later. And yes, this meeting is being recorded, and it will be posted on the plan website in the next few days. That is www.denvergov.org/near southeast plan. I have a slide with that URL on it coming up, so you'll be able to see that. But this meeting will be posted for anyone to review. All right, looks like we got most folks to take the poll. So let me share the results here. Hopefully you're seeing that. So it looks like the mailer was the most common, along with our emails, and then the council offices and the yard signs are doing some work. That's great. So thanks for responding to that. Most of you, this is your first of these meetings. That's great. We're glad to have new folks joining the process. But a few of you have been to a lot of these. That's good too. And then a good distribution on folks who have reviewed it or started reviewing it or have not reviewed it at all. So again, all of those are fine. We'll give an overview. So for the folks who have gone through the entire plan, this will be sort of a reminder and hopefully provide a little additional context for you. For the folks who haven't started looking at it yet, this will give you a good introduction if you want to take a look at it later. All right, so now let's dive into the overview here. And for the one person who said they hadn't heard of the plan yet, this is your opportunity to learn about it. So what is the Near Southeast Area Plan? The plan is a new area plan for 5 neighborhoods in Southeast Denver, as Councilman Cashman said a minute ago. Washington, Virginia Vale, Virginia Village, Indian Creek, Goldsmith, and University Hills north of Yale Avenue. So that is roughly Alameda Avenue on the north to Yale Avenue on the south, Colorado Boulevard on the west to Quebec and the city boundary on the east. That is the area we are looking at for near southeast. And when we say near southeast, that's what we are referring to. The plan is intended to engage the community to develop a community vision for this area of how the community would like to see this area evolve over the next 20 years or so. What issues are they facing right now that we can resolve, and how can we improve the area to achieve what the community would like it to be in the future? It is a visionary policy document, so it sets goals for what we would like and lays out recommendations and policies for how to achieve them, but it doesn't actually implement anything. It doesn't change regulations. It doesn't have an implementation budget attached to it. It doesn't design any actual infrastructure. Those are all processes that will have to follow the adoption of the plan. But it does provide guidance for future decisions by the city in terms of how we are allocating budget and other resources, how we are updating our regulations and our zoning code, the types of infrastructure we're building, the types of partnerships we're making. These neighborhood or small area plans, like near Southeast, take our citywide plans. You may be familiar with some of our citywide plans, like the comprehensive plan, Blueprint Denver, the Parks Game Plan for a Healthy City, our various Denver Moves mobility plans. It takes the guidance from those citywide plans and says, how should they actually be implemented here in a smaller area, and how do these various topics covered by the citywide plans work together? So these plans, these neighborhood plans, cover a smaller area, but a broad range of topics, and really focus on how they interact and interrelate. And they have to be, these plans have to be consistent with the guidance of those citywide plans. The planning process should take about 2 years. We started this, the community process, back in July of 2021. We are now into the fourth phase here with the draft plan out, aiming for adoption in the first half of next year. I will go over a little more of these phases here in just a minute. So talking about what we have done so far, first, over the last 18 months or so, we've been doing a lot of engagement. We've gotten thousands of responses to our surveys and opportunities online, thousands of comments, interacted with a lot of folks, including in person, at various opportunities like in-person workshops and office hours and things like that. As Councilman Cashman mentioned, we have a steering committee that has been meeting regularly throughout this process that has helped us guide the development of the draft plan. And we've been doing a lot of outreach and promotion in person and online. You can see all the social media interactions we've had as well. As I mentioned, the process started back in July of 2021 with the launch of phase 1, which we call Understanding the Area, trying to learn from the community what they like and don't like about their neighborhood and what they would like to see change, and how we can define that vision and understand what the community likes about their area. So we did a range of activities in sort of July to September of last year to do this, including a kickoff meeting that was on Zoom like this one. Back in July of last year, we were still really only doing online meetings. We couldn't go back to in-person yet, but we did have some in-person events outdoors during the summer for folks who wanted to meet us in person and learn about the plan that way. We also, at that time, were doing some existing conditions research to understand the background of the area. All of this is posted on the website, so there's a lot of great resources on there. If you want to take a look at these, there's some really interesting existing conditions background research. So we did all that to, again, learn what the community would like their area to be like in the future. These are a few of the key takeaways from that. There's a lot more Again, all posted on the website of everything we heard from the community, but these are some really high-level themes around improving the commercial areas, especially Evans Avenue, to make them look and function better and have more of the amenities that folks would like to see. Improved mobility options, so it's safer and easier to move around, more diverse and affordable housing options for folks living in the area, and improving the things people like around the area, like the parks and trails and green spaces, making sure those continue to be key community assets. That moved us into phase 2, which was earlier this year, where we took what we heard from the community they would like and started to develop the recommendations that would be needed to achieve that vision. So that was really about starting to get into the details of how can we implement what we've heard from the community they would like to see. Similar range of activities between February and May earlier this year, again, with workshops, in-person events, focus groups, things like that. And some key takeaways from that phase 2 engagement around improving the design of new development and making sure we have mobility improvements along with that, making sure that housing that gets built in the neighborhoods fits in, improving affordability and services for folks experiencing homelessness, supporting desired businesses, mobility improvements, especially for walking and biking in key intersections, improving landscaping and reducing water and energy use in the area. Got a lot of great feedback during that round of engagement as well. Used all of that to create a set of draft recommendations that we shared with the community this past summer to get feedback on them, make improvements to those recommendations, identify areas where we needed additional recommendations, and further refine what we are trying to achieve with the plan. Again, a set of engagement activities between July and September of this year, including both a virtual workshop like this one and an in-person workshop, as well as office hours, focus groups, things like that. Key takeaways from this last round of engagement, phase 3, directing growth to key intersections in the area, prioritizing affordability and character preservation in the neighborhoods, making sure that we transition well between the mixed use areas, the commercial areas, and the residential areas, making sure we're getting affordable housing in the areas that are served by transit and amenities, supporting local businesses, providing additional mobility options and limiting speeding within neighborhoods, prioritizing sidewalk improvements, especially on some key corridors, improving connections to our parks and trails, and enhancing the landscaping, especially in the mixed use areas where we are lacking tree coverage. So we took all of that guidance. Again, there's a lot more on the website if you want to dive into it, and use that to improve those draft recommendations and put them into the draft plan, which is what we're talking about now. So we posted the draft plan on November 21st, a couple of weeks ago. It's up on the website. You can take a look at it. You can provide comments on it. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. We are having 2 community workshops. We had one last week in person at Cook Park that we had good attendance at, got some great feedback. Thanks to everyone who came to that one. Tonight we have our second workshop that you are all attending right now. We also have office hours scheduled around the area. We had our first ones yesterday at the YMCA. Spoke to quite a few folks there. We've got 2 more right now scheduled for early January. Go to the website, you can find out more information. And as we try to get more of those scheduled, those will be updated on the website as well. You may have seen on some of those previous slides, we talked about focused engagement and community navigators. We know there are members of the community that don't typically participate in processes like these. And we also try to track who we are hearing from. So when you registered for this meeting, we asked you to fill out some demographic questions. That helps us know who we're hearing from and who we're not hearing from, and lets us know who we need to be putting in extra effort to hear from. And so far, the biggest group that we haven't been hearing from in the area is renters, folks who rent their homes. So we've been doing some extra effort to engage them and get feedback from them. We've done some events specifically targeted at renters that have gotten good attendance and gotten good feedback. So we will continue to do those. And we're also using what we call community navigators, which are members of the community that have worked with us throughout the process to serve as connections and liaisons to segments of the community that we want to hear more from. And so we will continue to use those going forward as well. So this is what you'll see if you go to the website, which again is denvergov.org/near-southeast plan. You will see the plan up there. You can go through the plan and provide comments on individual things. So if you click on anything in the plan, it'll pop up a little dialog box that will allow you to enter a comment. And that'll help us really target the improvements we need to make. So please go through there, add all your comments and your questions. We will take all those comments, make updates to the draft plan, and respond to all of those comments at the close of this round of engagement. And that will help us improve the draft plan before it goes to the next phase, which is the adoption process. There are a few other ways to review the plan and provide comments on it. If you don't like going through that review window, you can actually just download the full PDF of the plan and review it that way. There's also a general comment form if you have overall comments you want to provide, not tied to any specific element of the plan. You can fill out that general comment form on the website. And then, as I mentioned, we like to, as much as possible, track who we are hearing from. So we have a brief demographic survey if you wouldn't mind filling that out as well when you provide comments or questions on the website. And then if you don't like using the internet or you have trouble accessing it, we do have a hard copy of the plan available at the Virginia Village Library. So you can go to the library, there's a printout of the plan there, you can read through that, and there are some comment forms there as well. So you can provide any comments you have on those comment forms, and we'll collect those and respond to those as well. So this round of engagement will run at least into January. So you still have over a month left. I know we're getting into the holidays here. You may be busy, you may be out of time, or out of town. There will be plenty of time following that into mid-January at least to provide comments on all of these. And we'll keep track of how this is going and who we're hearing from and adjust if needed at that point. But once we close this round of engagement, as I said, we'll take all the comments we've gotten, make updates to the draft, and then start it through the adoption process, which we're aiming for this spring, which is still part of the public process. So this will go to planning board and city council, where we'll have public hearings. There will still be opportunities for folks to provide comments. So for those folks that are just getting involved in the process now, you may look at this and say, oh, there's already a draft plan. I missed my opportunity to influence it. That is far from the case. Please review the draft plan, provide comments. We will make significant changes to the plan based on those comments. And then even following the next draft, there's still opportunities to influence the plan. So there's still ways to go on this. So please continue to participate and provide comments and feedback. All right, so that was a lot about the process. Now let me give you a little overview of what's actually in the plan, and then we can move on to the question and answer section. There are 8 chapters in the plan. It starts with an introduction that gives a bit of an overview of the process and what you'll see in the plan. And then there are 4 topic chapters that provide area-wide recommendations for different topics. So that's land use and built form, what gets built where and what it looks like, housing and economy, how we can improve affordability and businesses in the area, mobility, how you move around your neighborhood, and then what we call quality of life infrastructure, which is sort of everything else. So that's parks and trails, that's landscaping and stormwater management, that's community safety, that's healthy food and access to healthcare and things like that. So those are the area-wide topic chapters. And then we have a chapter where each neighborhood has a section with specific recommendations for each neighborhood. So we know there are 5 neighborhoods in the area, as we've talked about. There are different issues and opportunities facing each of those neighborhoods. So we want to address them individually and also talk about how these 4 different topic areas come together within these neighborhoods to achieve the plan's goals. And then we have what we call focus areas and transformative projects. I'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but we have identified areas that we think need a little extra effort and some important projects that, if implemented in those areas, could make a big difference in achieving the vision for those locations. And then the last chapter is implementation. So talking about how we will take all of these recommendations in the plan and turn them into actual improvements for the neighborhood. So if you look at the plan, you'll see that there are sort of 3 big themes that run throughout the plan. Those are modernizing the centers and corridors in terms of land use, design, and mobility. So that's the key mixed use or commercial areas along Evans, Colorado, Leetsdale, around the light rail stations, making sure that those are serving the community well and functioning the way the community would like them to see. The second one is balancing housing affordability, options, and preservation in neighborhoods. So generally, folks like their neighborhoods. We want to preserve what affordability we still have in those neighborhoods, preserve the character of those neighborhoods while providing additional housing options throughout the area for folks in the area. And then the third one is improving sustainability with how we move around, how our green infrastructure functions, how our landscapes function. So those are 3 key themes throughout the plan, and you'll see these 3 icons on the left throughout the plan, indicating policies and recommendations that support one or more of these key themes. So that can help you sort of understand the way these different policies work together to achieve the important goals of the plan. Another sort of organizing framework we have is around equity. This comes from our citywide plans, Comprehensive Plan 2040 and Blueprint Denver, which talk about how we need to be addressing equity in the planning process and in the outcomes of our plans. And so it creates this framework that we use in all of our plans now to talk about how we can improve equity in neighborhoods. And there are 3 key measures we look at. One is improving access to opportunity. So making sure that everyone can get to the key services and amenities they need and transit in every neighborhood. One is reducing vulnerability to involuntary displacement. So making sure that folks can stay in their house if they want to or wherever they're living, and reducing that involuntary displacement of people in their neighborhoods and allowing folks to live where they want to within the city. And then the third one is expanding housing and jobs diversity. So providing a range of housing options and jobs in every neighborhood throughout the city. So again, if you look in the introduction section of the plan, there's several pages that go over these in more detail and talk about all of the various recommendations that support each of these aspects of equity. And then another organizing framework we talk about is sustainability. And again, this is something that was really highlighted in our citywide plans and Blueprint Denver of how we need to be thinking about improving sustainability of our city. And we've broken it down into sort of 3 categories similar to the equity measures around climate action. So reducing our impact on the climate, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, sustainability, how we are using our resources and making sure that we use them in a responsible manner going forward. And resiliency, how we are responding to a changing climate and making sure that we are keeping our community safe. And so again, we talk about how various recommendations in the plan support each of these ideas around sustainability. So these are sort of organizing principles for the plan. if you read through the introduction, you'll see how these are incorporated throughout the plan document. I'm going to talk briefly about some of the key recommendations in each of the topic areas. So starting with land use and built form, three key themes there are around thoughtful growth. So making sure we're directing new growth to appropriate places where we have or will have the infrastructure in place to support them, and we are getting benefits for the community, whether that's affordable housing or additional open space or whatever the community prioritizes for that. Second one is upgrading the centers and corridors, those commercial or mixed use areas, as we've talked about, making sure they look and function the way the community would like them to. And then the third one is around neighborhoods, as we talked about, preserving the affordability that we still have in some of these neighborhoods and the design characteristics that folks like, while adding those additional housing options. So there's a few ways that we are trying to tackle these, and we've summarized some of them in what we call the land use framework map that you'll see on here, talking about where we want to direct growth. Those are sort of those reddish areas on the map, and those are the key intersections along those corridors, along Evans, Colorado, and Leetsdale, at intersections like Evans and Monaco, Leetsdale and Monaco, Evans and Colorado, are the areas where we expect to see most of the growth occurring, where we have the infrastructure or will have the infrastructure to support them. We also want to get design and mobility improvements along those corridors. So that's that sort of diagonal hatch you'll see along those key corridors in terms of improving the infrastructure and improving the design. And then within the neighborhoods, we are, as we've talked about, looking at ways to add additional options, what we call missing middle housing options. So that is anything between the sort of traditional single family house and the large apartment buildings that we are seeing a lot of being built in Denver. So there's a wide range of housing options that fall in between there that don't get built very often. And we'd like to see more of those. So that's things like duplexes, triplexes, townhomes, garden courts, small apartment buildings. And so we are recommending ways to provide more of those options within different parts of the neighborhood, and which parts or which of those options are appropriate in different places, including duplexes in many of the areas within these neighborhoods. But then tying some of those opportunities with achieving other goals around improving or preserving character. So those are sort of the purple areas, are areas that have been identified as places that have potential historic character that we would like to preserve. And then the blue areas are areas that have been identified as having a greater chance of involuntary displacement, or areas where we want to focus providing additional affordability. So we talk about how we can use tools, including allowing additional units as incentives for preserving and providing more affordability in these parts of Near Southeast. The second topic area is housing and economy. Key themes there are improving housing, including providing more options and improving overall conditions of affordability of housing and affordable housing in the area, supporting local businesses with a variety of tools, and providing additional community resources in terms of education and workforce training, and also services to people experiencing homelessness to get them into housing. These aren't really mapped, so we don't have a map to go with these. So moving on to mobility, key themes there are improving the major corridors in the area, including the ones we've been talking about, like Evans, Colorado, and Leetsdale, but also the large streets that don't have commercial development on them, like Quebec or Monaco or Alameda, Dahlia, things like that, in terms of how people move along them and across them so they're safer and more efficient. Improving pedestrian and bicycle safety and access in the areas so people are safer and more comfortable walking and riding their bikes around the area. And calming traffic within neighborhoods, so slowing down cars within neighborhoods to improve safety and discourage cut-through traffic within the neighborhoods. So this is our mobility opportunities map, and you'll see some of the key corridors highlighted there. Like I said, there's a lot of streets that we're talking about that need upgrades or improvements to make them safer and more efficient. Highlighting some of the key intersections we want to make improvements for pedestrians or cyclists. Areas where we want to prioritize pedestrian, bicycle, or transit safety. Areas where we expect, or corridors we expect or transit improvements, including bus rapid transit in the future, and where we want to see mobility hubs, allowing people to transfer between a variety of mobility options at those locations. And then the fourth topic is quality of life infrastructure. Key themes there around greenery and recreation. So improving access to parks, trails, and natural amenities and making sure that they serve the community. Sustainability and resiliency, reducing our impact on the climate and preparing the area for future changes. And community well-being, so improving safety and health, access to food and community resources like libraries, like internet access and things like that. And so here is our quality of life framework map. The sort of blue blob areas are areas that need improved access to parks. So whether that's building new parks in those areas or improving access to existing parks from those areas, but areas where they're outside the range from existing parks. The yellow are areas where we want to improve green infrastructure. So that's really about managing stormwater. These are areas that are potentially vulnerable to flooding. So we want to improve our stormwater maintenance in those areas. And then the sort of pinkish blob are areas where we want to improve the landscaping. Those are a lot of those commercial areas where, as I mentioned, we don't have that high quality tree coverage. So improving the landscaping in those areas. We also want to better connect our trails in the area, extend Goldsmith Gulch Trail from where it ends at Iliff up to Cook Park and the Cherry Creek Trail, and potentially add a new trail north of Evans, connecting Goldsmith Gulch to Colorado Station. And then introducing this idea of contemporary parkways, which are key streets in the area connecting to parks and other destinations that would see mobility improvements, landscape improvements, green infrastructure improvements to make them places that are really safe, comfortable, and enjoyable to move along, no matter what mode you're using, again, to connect to these key destinations. So those are a quick overview of what we have recommended in the topic areas. I'm going to talk briefly about these focus areas and transformative projects. This will be the last section before we get into the Q&A. So we identified 5 areas in Near Southeast that we think, again, need a little more attention and have an opportunity to make a big difference in achieving the plan's goals. The first one is Colorado Station. So this is looking at a potential future development for Colorado Station. This isn't necessarily what it will look like, but giving an idea of what it could look like. So we're looking at Colorado Station here, looking east. So that's Colorado cutting across the bottom there, and then I-25 there at an angle, sort of running through the middle. And then Evans is off to the right there. So you'll see the existing development on sort of the left half, north of the station, where the movie theater and the Dave & Buster's and the food hall are, and those existing offices, and then the station in the middle. And then on the right half is, again, potential new development. If the RTD Park and Ride is redeveloped, if at some point in the future the Freeway Forward and the public storage are also redeveloped. And so the key idea here is that by putting the Park and Ride parking into a structure, we create additional opportunities to direct growth to this location, which is a key opportunity area for that, an area where we want to see the most growth because it has good access to transit, it has the light rail there, and further developing the range of services and amenities in that area to achieve that goal. The next one is Yale Station. So down at Yale and I-25, you'll see Yale running left to right there along the bottom, and I-25 at an angle there, sort of through the middle, the station and park and ride there being just to the left of I-25. So again, looking at an opportunity to turn this into more of a community serving center. And a big part of that is improving the connections across I-25, especially for people walking and biking. Right now, it's not easy to get along Yale and into the station area. So making improvements under the highway and along Yale and looking for additional opportunities to add connections into that station area. So people can get to transit, they can get to new potential opportunities for businesses in that area and things like that. The third one we're looking at is the Evans and Monaco area. So this is Monaco running up and down, Evans running left and right there. The former Kmart there is in the bottom right quadrant that's being redeveloped currently. So a big idea here is integrating more of a connected grid in that area, so it's easier to move around and through that area, and then also improving the greenery and green infrastructure in the area. So Goldsmith Gulch has that detention pond just south of Iliff, improving that to be more of a community asset, and then opening up the gulch so it creates more greenery, more aesthetic improvement as it runs through the area. And as I mentioned earlier, extending the trail that currently ends at Iliff up through this area as well. And then we're looking at the Leetsdale and Monaco area. So again, that's Monaco running up and down, Leetsdale running at an angle. And then George Washington High School is there in sort of the top left. The King Soopers area is in the sort of bottom right area. And the key idea here is really around mobility improvements and making it safer and easier to cross Leetsdale and move along Leetsdale. So students going to George Washington can get there safer and more conveniently, and providing additional connections through these developments so that it's easier to move around the area as well. And the last one we're looking at is what we call the Indian Creek Industrial Area. So this is the southernmost portion of the Indian Creek neighborhood on the south side of Cherry Creek, just east of Quebec. So that's Quebec running up and down on sort of the left side, and then the creek running diagonally through there. So this is where the Waste Transfer Center recycling drop-off is, that orange area at the top, and then it goes down to where the Dumb Friends Leak is there along Quebec and stretches east to the creek. So the idea here is to introduce some additional uses into that industrial flex area, better connect that area to the creek. We've done those really nice improvements along this section of Cherry Creek, so better connecting the development into that area so people have better access to it, and looking at improvements around that recycling waste transfer center so that it becomes more of a community asset and it isn't a nuisance to the area. So that just gives sort of an overview of how some of these recommendations can be implemented in a few of these key areas. Hopefully giving a little bit of overview of what the goals of the plan are. So I've been talking for a long time now. Time to open it up for questions. The way this will work, I think, is continue to submit questions to the Q&A. My colleagues are going through those. They will pick out questions so we're not repeating ourselves. And what we'd like to do is call on folks to ask their questions. So if you submitted a question and we choose it, we will call out your name. Please raise your hand, use the raise hand function that will help us find you. And then we can make it so you can talk and ask your question, and then we will try to answer it. So with that, I will turn it over to Jason or Will or Kristen, if they have a question ready.
Sure, great. Thanks, Scott. Good evening, everyone. Jason Morrison with Community Planning and Development. So we've received a number of questions, and the first question is in regards to affordable housing. So if Nancy, I believe Suti is available, it looks like she just raised her hand, so we would invite you to ask your question.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, my question is, you often talk about increasing affordable housing, and I just wondered what the definition of affordable is, and because I often hear about affordable housing in the downtown area where I work, yet it's still very expensive for people making a sort of a medium to lower income wage.
Yeah, great question. So there's sort of a standard way we define affordable housing when we talk about affordable income restricted housing, and that is relative to what is known as the area median income. So that's looking at the entire Denver metro area and identifying what that median income is, and then setting the price of that housing so that it is affordable to folks making a specific percentage of that area median income. So common thresholds are like 60% of AMI or 30% of AMI. And so the specifics of what those levels would be determined through future processes or through existing programs like the Expanding Housing Affordability Program that was adopted earlier this year that requires certain levels of affordable housing in new development. And so it has levels, or it defines those levels of what affordability is relative to that area median income.
Okay, thanks.
It looks like Councilman had something he wanted to follow up with that.
Yeah, Scott, I just wanted to, let me turn my video on, excuse me. I just wanted to add that the standard of affordability is a person should not be paying more than 30% of their income for their housing needs, including rent or mortgage and utilities. So I just wanted to pitch that into the affordability discussion.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for adding that, Councilman. And thank you, Nancy, for that question. That was a good question. All right, do we have another one ready?
Yeah, we have a question regarding, it's anonymous. What type of businesses will you be attracting to these areas? So we do not define that directly. A lot of the feedback we received from the community is to look at more local businesses, especially around restaurants, grocery stores, maybe community serving, neighborhood serving businesses such as coffee shops. So a lot of the recommendations first look at providing resources such as just business planning, financing, or other incentives to help businesses get started or continue to grow. And additionally, also to help encourage business associations or business improvement districts. And so through the Department of Economic Development, as well as these local business groups, we hope that through partnerships that can be ways to find and target certain types of businesses that are desirable to the area. One other recommendation we have is for existing businesses to look into or consider adding amenities or services or products that are lacking in the area. So we do not call out individual types of businesses, but we encourage and recommend individual businesses, business groups, and community groups to target and focus on attracting these types of businesses to create a little bit more vibrancy within the business corridors of the area.
Great, thanks, Will. And thanks for the whoever submitted that question anonymously. It looks like Councilwoman Black has something she'd like to add to that.
Thanks, Scott. I just wanted to remind everyone that while we would like to have local businesses and we will do our best to attract them, that we can't stop, fast food restaurants or chain stores from coming here. I've tried for 7 years to bring locally owned restaurants down to my council district, and we can't make them come unless they want to come. But it is a goal. Just wanted to sort of have a reality reminder. That's it.
Yeah, great points, Councilwoman. Thanks for that. And yeah, so that's why as Will was saying, the recommendations really focus around encouraging the types of businesses the community has told us they'd like to see. We can't make them come here, and we can't prevent other types of businesses from coming here necessarily, but it's really about incentivizing and making it easier and attractive for those types of businesses. All right, next question.
Sure,
We
Scott.
have-
Go ahead, Kristen.
We have a couple of anonymous questions with regards to increased apartment building development and increased density and their impact on traffic that's already difficult in the area. And also potentially some concerns about, how that may or may not, like what the effect might be on existing home values.
Okay. Yeah, good question. So as we talked about, we're trying to direct growth to appropriate areas where we have infrastructure in place to serve it, or we will have infrastructure. So we do have a recommendation around areas where we are allowing additional height in the future, that making sure we do an infrastructure analysis before we allow those developments to go forward, so that we can identify shortfalls in mobility infrastructure and create the solutions for those before we see that new development. So we've certainly heard that from the community, that it is hard enough to move around the area as it is now, and concerned about adding additional growth and additional traffic to the streets. So we want to look at how we can make improvements to those before we start seeing significant additional growth. We will see some additional growth in the near term, because there are places that already have entitlements in place, so they can basically just build under their existing allowances. They don't need to ask us for additional height. So it's really only in those areas where we're allowing additional height and they need to come in for rezoning to get that we have the opportunity to leverage more of that. So then we are also looking at ways to just make improvements to the mobility infrastructure in the area, to make it easier to get around. And the way that we approach that in Denver is not by adding lanes. We found everyone has found nationwide, internationally, that adding lanes is a short-term improvement, that it quickly just returns to congestion. And so the way that we approach it is by providing additional connections and additional modal opportunities. So you may have noticed on some of those slides I was showing in the opportunity areas, where we are trying to add additional streets and additional connections. By providing those additional connections, we can make it so that you don't always have to go on to the main corridor like Evans or Colorado or Leedsdale to get where you're going. You can use parallel network, and then also looking at making improvements to other modes so that you don't necessarily have to drive everywhere. So we talked about transit improvements, adding bus rapid transit and other improvements to the transit system, making bicycle and pedestrian improvements so that you can walk or bike safely around your area and don't necessarily have to drive for every trip. And looking at alternative modes, future mobility opportunities, things like that. So there's a lot of mobility options or mobility improvements recommended in the plan, both to address existing problems, and then thinking about, as we grow, how are we going to accommodate that future growth as well. And I see Councilwoman Black has her hand up again.
Hi. I just wanted to remind everyone, there were some comments about density and apartments. And I think it's important for everyone to remember that we do have a housing shortage in our city, state, and across the whole country. And we have to add more housing, and it needs to happen all across our city. It can't just be in other people's neighborhoods. And so that's one of the purposes of this plan, is to talk about where it might be appropriate, and where it would better suit the needs of every neighborhood. But we do need to add housing options in all of our neighborhoods. Happy to answer questions about that if people want to email me directly. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And yeah, that's a great point and a great reminder that, as I talked about, we have guidance from our citywide plans that we need to be consistent with. And a big part of that is about adding housing options in every part of the city. So that's what we are looking at, is how we can do that in appropriate ways here in Near Southeast, including addressing those infrastructure needs, addressing those design needs, addressing that affordability issue with the new housing options that we are adding. Did that cover it, or was there another part of that question, Kristen?
This might not be something that we can necessarily address, and especially may not be related to the plan, but there was some questions about the impact of new development on existing housing value.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting question, and there's not a straightforward answer to that. There are some ways in which investment in an area raises housing values. There are some ways in which it negatively impacts housing values, and that's a complicated issue in that for people who own their homes, generally rising housing values is seen as a good thing, except it also increases your property taxes. For people trying to buy into a neighborhood that they might like to live in, rising housing values is a problem. And so, as Kristen said, the plan doesn't really directly address impacts on existing housing values, but we are, as Councilwoman Black was saying, trying to address housing availability and affordability throughout the area. So we're looking at options for providing additional housing and ensuring that housing includes affordable units wherever it comes in. All right, more questions?
So we have another housing question, Scott. So I think you briefly touched on this earlier in the presentation, but will you again describe what we mean when we say missing middle housing, and specifically if we would classify ADUs under that category?
Yeah, good question. So ADUs are generally talked about sort of separately. They're sort of separate but related to missing middle. But it may be easier just to think of them as part of missing middle as well. So as I mentioned, missing middle is sort of everything in between your standard traditional single unit house and the large multi-story apartment buildings that we see being built around town. So that includes a wide range of housing options, from duplexes, 2-unit structures, 3-unit structures, 4-unit structures, townhomes, so a row of units lined up next to each other, things like small apartment buildings, up to about 20 units, including like garden court apartment forms where they are sort of arranged around this courtyard that we see in a lot of the older neighborhoods in Denver. And so, yeah, ADUs sort of fit into that idea, even if they don't technically fall under our missing middle the way that we address it in the plan. They're sort of missing middle and accessory dwelling units. So for anybody not familiar with them, ADU stands for accessory dwelling units, and they are small units that can be built on a property. They can either be attached, so you can turn your basement into an ADU or detached. Sort of the classic is if you have a detached garage in your backyard, putting a unit above that, or they can be standalone structures in your backyard, things like that. That can be rented out separately from whoever lives in the main structure. So again, our citywide guidance from Blueprint Denver says we should be looking at allowing accessory dwelling units throughout the city. They're currently only allowed in some neighborhoods. And right now, we don't really have the regulations in place to allow them in more suburban areas like most of near Southeast. So there's actually another project that the city is working on right now called ADUs in Denver that is looking at making improvements to our ADU regulations to address multiple things, including affordability and how easy they are to build. And then also how they are built in suburban areas like this. And that is also looking at getting adopted this spring. And so that'll provide better guidance for how accessory dwelling units should work in areas like near Southeast. Once we have that, then we can look at allowing ADUs as a housing option within near Southeast. Again, as the citywide guidance says, they should be allowed everywhere. So we just need to get the regulations in place, and then we can change the zoning to allow them in near Southeast.
We also have questions related to duplexes, and I know we touched about this a little bit about infrastructure and so forth, but there's some concerns of, adding duplexes may be looked at as demolishing or removing existing homes. So if you could talk a little bit more about the duplex planning and some of the guidelines for that, so that we can retain the affordable homes as well as add the density. I know we touched about this a little bit, but there's some concerns or questions about duplexes in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, so this is one of the big recommendations in the plan, is looking at opportunities to provide additional housing in the form of duplexes within the neighborhoods. And we address this a few ways. And one of the first things to talk about is recommendations for design improvements, or how we regulate design within neighborhoods, whether that is duplexes or single unit houses or whatever gets built. That you may have noticed that where there is a new house being built, it is usually much larger than the existing houses surrounding it. We've heard from the community that that's a concern. So we have recommendations around updating the zoning regulations to limit the size of new construction or additions in the area. Again, whether that's a 1-unit structure or 2-unit structure or whatever gets built. So we'd like to get those in place so that as the area starts to evolve, we have good regulations in place to make sure that whatever is happening fits into the neighborhood. And then on top of that, we're looking at opportunities to, as I said, provide areas where duplexes could be added. That could be adding an addition onto an existing house. So it may not require demolishing the existing house. It could be done through an addition. And there are some areas, the preservation priority areas on that map, where that would be the requirement. You would not be able to add a duplex unless you preserve the existing house and did it as an addition. There are other areas where that wouldn't be the requirement, but would still be an option. And again, with that additional restriction on the size of what could be built, may be a better option for some areas. And then we also want to ensure affordability and prevent displacement. So that's where we had that anti-displacement priority area, where if there is a duplex added, one of the units would have to be affordable at some level. And as we just talked about, there's different ways that we can set that affordability level. So we would need to, through a future project, figure out what the appropriate level for that is. But the idea is that we would create more affordable units within these neighborhoods by allowing folks to add a second unit. Again, it could be an addition, it could be a new construction, but at least one of the units would have to be affordable to provide more affordable options within these neighborhoods for folks. So that's the idea. There's sort of a lot of moving parts in this, and it's kind of complicated. So hopefully I explained it clearly. If you have more questions about it, come to one of the office hours. We're happy to sit down and talk through it with you and answer all your questions. But hopefully that provided a little more explanation.
Next question is, how and when will these recommendations be implemented? And specifically, there's a little bit of a case study querying how proposed developments that are proposed now might relate to the plan. This is a particular development where a 6-story building is proposed in a location on the map where we're proposing 3 stories as being the appropriate height.
Yeah, good question. So this is a sort of 20-year plan. We are sort of planning out to 2040. And so there will be a process of implementation. So not everything will happen right away. Not everything will take 20 years. Part of what we would like to hear from the community through this process is what is most important in this plan, what should be the priorities for implementation. And that'll help us allocate resources, allocate budget to achieve those priorities sooner rather than later. One thing we are working on right now is what we call an implementation matrix. So that is identifying all of the recommendations in the plan and saying, should they be short-term priorities or medium-term or long-term priorities, and what are the steps to achieving them. That will be public once we get it done, and that'll go out with the next draft of the plan next year. So you all can take a look at that when it's ready. But that will provide guidance on how we are going to implement the plan. And there are different types of implementation that we look at. So some are regulatory, some are changing the regulations in the zoning code or elsewhere in the municipal code to control what happens on private property or what is allowed within the city. Some are infrastructure. So things that the city needs to build, whether that's street improvements or new sidewalks or new bike lanes or trails or things like that, that all falls under infrastructure. Some are services or programs. So creating new services that the city or a partner would offer, or programs to help achieve some of these goals. And then some of them are partnerships, working with other agencies like RTD or Denver Public Schools or nonprofits in the area or things like that. So those are sort of the types of implementation we're looking at. So we will have a sort of plan for how we will prioritize all of the recommendations going forward, and what should be done first and what should be done later. And then in terms of influencing, existing development proposals, there are, properties have typically existing development entitlements, development rights. Folks may be trying to take advantage of those at any time. And so if somebody comes forward and they are proposing a development that is within their existing rights from the zoning and other regulations, they can move forward with that, even if this plan says it should be something different, if we haven't changed the regulations. So I don't know what specific development it was, but there was apparently a proposal for a 6-story development where the plan says 3-story. If their zoning currently allows 6-story development, they can move forward with that as long as they meet all of the requirements. One of the recommendations coming out of the plan is to do some proactive rezonings to change some of the regulations to better match what is in the plan to the existing zoning. So there may be instances where the city comes in, or one of the council members sponsors a rezoning to change the entitlements to better match what's in the plan. That could be one of the priorities that happens sooner rather than later after adoption of the plan. So that will then be a matter of timing if the development gets their approvals to go first before we get the regulations changed around that, or vice versa. I hope that answered the question.
Okay, so this looks like this could be one of our last questions. So just a reminder for folks, if you do have a question, go ahead and insert it into the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. And Scott, I'm happy to take this question. This is in regards to mobility. Question was asked, what does the plan do to increase multimodal opportunities throughout the near Southeast area? And so within the mobility chapter, we have spent a lot of time, analyzing how folks do travel, both within and through the near Southeast area. And as a result, we have a number of recommendations for pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure. So looking at specific intersections and corridor improvements to make it more efficient and safer and more comfortable for folks utilizing those modes to access the near Southeast area. Additionally, we have recommendations along the modal priority for transit. And so thinking about ways that we can improve not only access to transit, but also provide additional and better amenities to increase ridership at those bus stops and those mobility hubs, as well as those light rail stations. And then finally, when it comes to multimodal options, the plan contemplates and recommends a variety of recommendations along kind of this education and outreach to residents on free and reduced programs. So for, e-bicycles, scooters, things like that, providing resources on available rebates for those programs, as well as partnering with certain car share companies to have, electric car share vehicles and charging stations and things like that at various locations throughout the near Southeast area. So, so you'll find that there are a number of recommendations that really kind of think very broadly about how folks choose to travel throughout the near Southeast area and to make it more efficient and more comfortable and safe to do so. And like I said, it looks like we might have one more question here for mobility. It was just a comment. So yeah, again, there was a particular comment that speaks to again, looking at priority streets within the area and really kind of how the plan balances folks that do choose to continue to drive, but also how can we, of course, make it safer for pedestrians and bicyclists to navigate certain corridors, in addition to those that do drive along those corridors. So,
all right.
I'm not seeing any more questions. So again, we've got a few more minutes here, so feel free to type a few in. And Scott, maybe you can talk about next steps as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Jason. So yeah. If you got any more questions, throw them in there, or if you're having trouble with the Q&A box, just raise your hand and we can let you ask your question that way as well. And then we do have a couple questions that we had prepared based on other questions we had. So if we have some time here, maybe we can answer a couple of those as well. But yeah, as Jason said, let's just give a quick reminder of next steps. Go to the website, denvergov.org/near Southeast plan to review the plan, provide comments, take the demographic survey, learn about where we will be for office hours. If you want to come talk to us, ask questions, have a more detailed discussion. And so those are currently right now, we have 2 office hours scheduled for January. We may get some more scheduled. We will keep you all updated on the timing of when we will be closing this round of engagement. But at this point, you still have over a month to provide more feedback. We know it's a big document, take a while to go through. If you are part of a neighborhood organization or any part of organization in the area, and you would like us to come speak to your group, we are happy to do so. Get in touch with us. Our contact information is on the website there. we're happy to schedule a meeting with you or attend one of your regular meetings. And then, as I said, we will take all of this feedback. We will go through it. We will provide responses to all of the suggestions for improvement, whether we take that suggestion and make that change or not. We will provide an explanation for why we didn't do it. And we will update the draft plan, create a new version of the draft plan, an improved version of the draft plan that we will then start through the adoption process in the spring, starting with planning board, and then it will go to city council, and you will, as I said, have opportunities to continue to participate in the plan throughout that process as well. So yes, please, we want feedback. Even though there is a draft plan, we really want you to read it and provide feedback on it so we can improve it and make sure it really reflects what the community would like in this area. This should be really driven by what the community wants. So we want your feedback. We need your feedback to make a quality plan that is supported by the community. And the more support we get for the plan, the more support there will be for implementation of the recommendations of the plan. So please tell your friends and neighbors about this if they haven't participated already. We want as many people as possible to be aware of the plan and provide feedback on it. Looks like we got one more question that came in here around priority streets. Jason, do you want to answer that one as well?
Sure, I was just typing a response to that, but yeah, happy to answer that live here. So question was, the plan does have a number of priority streets in the mobility section, and we really break those out into kind of those three categories. So we have transit priority streets, pedestrian priority streets, and bicycle priority streets. And so in working with the community over the last year and a half, we really wanted to kind of understand, what were the prioritized modes for specific corridors within the neighborhood. And so when we say transit priority street, those are streets that are improved, or those are streets that are designed to improve transit frequency, capacity, as well as provide, those enhanced amenities that I spoke to earlier at those stops. And pedestrian priority streets are really contemplated to be where the city will make, prioritize investments to make those specific streets safe, comfortable, and accessible for all modes, for all folks that walk along those streets, and also including things like stormwater management infrastructure, climate appropriate vegetation, art, signage, wayfinding, as well as enhanced lighting and things like that. And then the third category, bicycle priority streets, those are streets that are designed to provide increased separation from traffic for people that are riding their bikes, as well as really focusing on some of those key intersections along those streets, and making sure that we have, just improved flow and safety for those folks that choose to ride their bike in that area. And so again, those priority streets were identified by the community, and we have a number of recommendations on each corridor, and those concepts we also go into those concepts in a lot greater detail in the mobility chapter in the plan. So thank you very much for that question.
All right, great. Thanks, Jason. And so it looks like we have answered all of our questions, even our prepared ones. So if anyone else has anything to add, do it now. Otherwise, we might end a couple minutes early here. Thank you again all for attending. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your Wednesday evenings to come learn about the plan and provide feedback. And as I said, really encourage you all to, if you haven't already, go through the draft plan, provide feedback on it, and stay involved in the process going forward. All right, I guess we'll go ahead and end it. So thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening and have happy holidays.